And the statements from RFK Jr. about trying to address the epidemic of diet-related chronic disease, that's exactly what FDA wants to do.
Hello and welcome to the Doge and MAHA news channel. My name is Chris. In today's video, we're going to focus on Make America Healthy Again, and we're going to react to this video on NBC News regarding RFK Jr. and the FDA. So let's get into it.
Welcome back. Ahead of what is perhaps the biggest eating-focused holiday of the year, food recalls have been grabbing Americans' attention, with recent recalls ranging from carrots to poultry to frozen waffles over concerns from foodborne illnesses like E. coli, salmonella, and listeria. It comes after a Gallup poll shows that trust in the government's ability to ensure food safety has reached a record low.
That is a fact. Trust in the government assurance of food safety hits a record low. Oh my goodness, that is really true. In this case, they're talking about things that are foodborne related illnesses and some of the recalls that they've had, some of the very large recalls that they've had. That is also under the FDA's umbrella. They're supposed to monitor foodborne illnesses and outbreaks and things like that. But the American people definitely do not have much trust in the government, period, nor trust in their ability to make sure our food is actually safe. So let's find out more about this.
And as the FDA, which regulates more than 3/4 of the country's food supply, is preparing for a shakeup with the incoming Trump administration. President-elect Trump announced his picks to lead the FDA, who will ultimately report up to Mr. Trump's pick for Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, Kennedy's faced some criticism for his vaccine skepticism, but his pledges on food safety have resonated with some lawmakers, potentially earning him some support from Democrats. Joining me now is Christina Jewett, who...
You know, I don't know who can be against food safety. It blows my mind. Sure, they might disagree with him on his viewpoint on vaccines. However, how can you be against making our food safer and healthier? How can you be against removing chemicals from our food products? That doesn't make any sense to me. However, there's going to be a lot of lawmakers, a lot of congressmen and women that are going to fight this. And unfortunately, they're mostly going to be on the liberal or the Democrat side just because it's the Trump regime. But we need to make sure we are standing up, telling these lawmakers what we want, that we want safe food that is free from chemicals.
Covers the FDA for the New York Times. Also with me, Susan Main, the former director of the FDA's Center for Food and Safety and Applied Nutrition, and currently a professor at Yale's School of Public Health. Christina, let's start with you. We mentioned just some of the current food recalls in effect, and it feels like it's been like an uptick for months. Is that just a perception, or are we actually seeing a rise in foodborne illnesses?
You know, it's really more of a perception. The numbers don't really bear out a big increase, but when you have these really iconic names like Boar's Head, you know, with Listeria, and McDonald's with E. coli, that's when people do start to, you know, notice these outbreaks. And so the numbers do seem like they're adding up. And you also have a better ability to detect things. And you also have the USDA going out to take a look at ready-to-eat meat facilities to make sure things are shipshape. And so you got a couple more big recalls out of that as well.
So what do consumers need to know as they're heading into this holiday season, Christina?
You know, I'm cooking for Thanksgiving myself, and, you know, cooking is considered a kill step. And so as you go through that process, you're really making your food quite safe. You know, some of the more concerning, you know, products are the cold cuts that you put right on your sandwich. You know, it goes from the plant onto your plate. Same thing with a sliced onion, right from, you know, the processing facility where those were cut up in Colorado onto the McDonald's quarter pounders. So, you know, as I think about my, you know, recipes for Thanksgiving, things are pretty heavily cooked. So I'm not too concerned about that meal tomorrow. But yeah, in general, in the food safety system, when you have items that are you know, not processed in that way, you know, not cooked at home, you do have higher risk.
So Susan,
I think there's a point here too. I mean, what about, they gave the example of the onions, right? What about the chemicals that are being sprayed on our vegetables? Is anyone looking at those? Are those causing illnesses? Are those causing gastrointestinal illnesses? I don't know, but I'm really curious to hear more about that. That seems to be something that they're not really talking about, at least not yet. However, I'm pretty sure that is on RFK Jr.'s radar, and he's really going to look at that.
And I picked up on what Christina said about the fact that the FDA is just finding out before the fact that some of this food may not be safe, and therefore that's what's leading to these recalls. How should people be thinking about these food recalls? Is it a sign that things are getting worse, or is it a sign that the system's actually functioning correctly and catching these things before they actually become a threat?
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the outbreaks and the recalls. The purpose of the outbreak investigations is to identify an outbreak as soon as possible and to keep the number of cases, the number of people who've gotten sick, as small as possible, and then interview those people and figure out what may have been causing those illnesses.
They're talking about these outbreaks, but I didn't really hear any numbers, like how many people got sick. You know, there's massive recalls, but how many people actually got sick from these? I'm curious about that. They're not really talking about it.
Illnesses. And what we've seen in recent years is our ability to identify even those outbreaks has gone up dramatically just in the last decade. And the number of people who are sickened in these outbreaks has gone down. So, for example, if you think about something like one of the big outbreaks we've been focused in on in the news, the carrot outbreak, for example, we had 39 people who were sickened in that outbreak. Tragically, there was a death, but 39 people. And in the past, outbreaks were much larger than this, and our ability to detect them was less. So that's a key.
The outbreaks are impacting less people. They're able to identify them quicker and take action quicker, get the information out to the public quicker. Unfortunately, 39 people did get sick, and she's saying that it did result in the death of one person. So that's sad, and I'm hoping that they can actually get better at this, that they can identify issues, outbreaks faster and faster and faster, and really be able to protect people from foodborne illnesses.
Key piece of it. So we detect the outbreak, we identify the food, and then get that message out to retailers to get the food off the shelves and to consumers so they can get it out of their kitchens. So that's how the food safety system is working, to try to get earlier and earlier and earlier to protect consumers from unsafe food. And in some cases, products are being recalled before any illnesses. For example, if they've been tested for microbial contamination and found to harbor bacteria, those are being recalled as well. A number of recalls are also based upon undeclared allergens, pulling those off the shelves before they cause illness. So that's where we are with our U.S. food safety system. So I agree with Christina that families should feel confident when they sit down to the table for their Thanksgiving meal. They should feel confident in the safety of the food.
So, Christina,
I mean, that's good. That's a good sign that they are identifying issues before they actually get to people, so that they're able to protect us from food that might have some of these contaminants on them. So that's a really good sign. Now, I think that the incoming leadership, RFK Jr. and Marty McCary, can definitely streamline processes within the FDA and make it probably even better and better and better. So hopefully we won't have any foodborne illnesses that actually reach the American people, and that these issues are identified prior to these products hitting the marketplace.
This all, of course, comes as we're getting our first look at who's going to be in charge of the FDA in the new Trump administration. Tell us more about Marty McCary. Sorry.
Well, he is sort of a noted contrarian over the years, and that contrarian streak, came to the fore over a decade ago when he sort of had the courage to speak out about errors, medical errors in the healthcare system, hospitals sort of operating on the wrong side of the patient. And he, on sort of the right arm instead of the left arm. So he spoke up about that, and he went around and helped hospitals fix those problems. More recently, the contrarian streak has sort of cut into the issues related to the COVID pandemic with some criticism of lockdowns and also a prediction about herd immunity that was a bit bold and didn't quite bear out and made some waves. But he is seen as someone who's an experienced researcher, somewhat of a institutional person with some criticism, some pointed criticisms of the system. So it'll be really interesting to see what he does.
Susan, you served in multiple administrations. How much can a change in an administration impact the FDA's ability to regulate our food supply?
Well, the folks at the FDA are there working day in and day out to protect our food safety system. They're also working on nutrition issues and have taken numerous policy initiatives to help improve the healthfulness of our food supply.
I disagree. Unfortunately, I'm pretty sure that a lot of people at the FDA, especially in the higher ranks, have been bought and paid for by big food and big pharma, and they are basically in the pocket of those big organizations, and they're making decisions that benefit the big food and big pharma, not the health of the American people. How often do you see leaders from the FDA get hired onto the board of a big food company or a big pharma company, and then they kind of go back and forth, and then there's a leader from big food that gets on the board of the FDA, and so there's this back and forth of the leadership of big food and big pharma and the FDA. So there's obviously some corruption there. You know, I could probably do a video showing all of the names. I've seen some X posts about that, all the names going back and forth. So there's definitely corruption in the FDA. Okay, so I found this X post, and there's a ton of them. They're not exactly all the same with the same people. There's different versions with different people that are going back and forth between FDA and big pharma or other food companies. So it's really interesting here. Let's go ahead and look at some of these names real quick. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on this, but I'll zoom in here. So it says Mark McKellen, former FDA commissioner in charge of regulating Johnson & Johnson. On the right is a current member of the board of directors of Johnson & Johnson. Same guy. Then you go to Scott Gottlieb. On the left, he's the FDA commissioner. And on the right, he's on the board of Pfizer. Then we have a guy named Stephen Hahn. On the left, he's part of the FDA he's an FDA commissioner. And on the right, he's a current chief medical officer of Flagship Pioneering, the value capital firm behind Moderna. Then we have this guy named James Smith. On the left, he's the CEO of Reuters, in charge of informing people about the COVID-19 vaccines. On the right, he is a current member of the board of directors of Pfizer. And then, of course, you have Dr. Anthony Fauci.
And that was true across all three administrations that I worked in, the Obama administration, the Trump administration, and the Biden administration. So those folks are working hard to execute that work. Obviously, the FDA commissioner has a big role to play in terms of what work is prioritized. So certain things will make their way through the system to the HHS for clearance and then to the White House and ultimately move forward as new policies. The administration's priorities will really help determine which things are going to move most aggressively. And the statements from RFK Jr. about trying to address the epidemic of diet-related chronic disease, that's exactly what FDA wants to do, is to really address the epidemic of diet-related chronic disease. So those policies are areas that are very well aligned with the mission of the FDA on the food side of the house.
I mean, that's actually good to hear from someone like her. I don't know how true it is, but it makes me feel good that maybe RFK Jr. can come in and make more of an impact. Maybe he'll have less of a fight on his hands to make changes in the FDA and NIH and overall Health and Human Services. I mean, I hope that people can get on board with this idea of actually having healthy food. But, you know, big food and big pharma, they are going to fight this tooth and nail. They're not going to want to have to change the recipes and remove the chemicals and the carcinogens that they are putting in our foods right now. They're not going to want to have to remove that. They're not going to want to have to remove high fructose corn syrup. So it's definitely going to be a fight. And so, yeah, I mean, she's talking like the FDA has our health in mind. But again, I don't believe them, and I don't think the American people actually believe that. So we'll see what happens.
But how do we square, Susan, kind of the way that Donald Trump talks about deregulating things? He's talked about deregulating so many different industries, but then on the same token, he's installed someone at HHS like RFK Jr. who has talked about installing regulations to try and deal with some of these issues that you're talking about. Is it that he's kind of picking and choosing the things that he wants to regulate, or how should we interpret that?
Well, much of the work of the FDA will not require new regulations, just simply executing the ones that already exist to help protect our food supply. It'll be interesting to see if they are contemplating any new ones, any new changes in regulations and authorities.
Yeah, get those chemicals out of our food. Outlaw things like yellow dye, red dye, high fructose corn syrup. I mean, get that stuff out of our food. Let's start with those regulations
to address some of the issues of chemicals in the food supply. But short of that, FDA has the authorities it needs to do the labeling, to inform consumers, to execute the food safety mission. But the administration may be looking for new authorities to help move this more rapidly along to address this epidemic of diet-related chronic disease and make America healthy again. So it'll be interesting to see how that particular dynamic plays out in this administration.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting interview. Obviously, this is the NBC News and the mainstream media. And I thought the two guests were fairly positive about RFK Jr. and his vision to eliminate chronic illnesses, the chronic illness epidemic, like the one guest said. So that is a good sign. So maybe some of these people that are within the FDA, within that circle, can understand how important this is to get the chemicals out of our food, and hopefully they will help initiate that process, and it won't be so much of an internal battle. I can imagine there's definitely going to be an internal battle within the FDA and these other organizations as the food companies, the pharma companies, and the chemical companies are all fighting to keep chemicals within our food system and our food supply. So I think there's going to be a battle there, but hopefully RFK Jr. and Dr. Marty McCary and the other leaders that Trump is bringing in can definitely push through the obstacles and make our food clean and free from these chemicals so that we can be healthy again. Stop chronic illnesses, stop America from being the sickest country in the world, and that's going to reduce our overall medical costs. It's going to be a big win for everyone. Well, if you're like me and you're really curious about the Make America Healthy agenda and you want to see what RFK Jr. as well as some of the other Trump appointees can do to make our food safer, then this is the right channel for you, because every day I'm going to bring you the latest updates, the latest news regarding the Make America Healthy Again agenda, all the latest stories. So make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video, which is every single day. And if you want to see more videos regarding Make America Healthy Again, and you're like me and you're trying to learn more and more about this, well, you're in luck. I have a playlist right here with a bunch of Make America Healthy Again videos, so check that out. I just want to say thanks again for watching this video, and I appreciate you. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.